Pleasure to have back in the studio with us this morning Tom Wheelwright, CPA, CEO of Provision Wealth. Tom, good morning to you.
Good morning.
Well, we have the first debate of the president. Why are we starting this so early? Coming up in just a few days, as a matter of fact, the first GOP presidential debate. Just out of curiosity this morning, I was looking this up. It takes about 74,000 8.5 by 11 sheets of paper to contain our current tax code. You would think there has to be something a little simpler and better than that, and the candidates are addressing it this time.
There's no question. The candidates are all over this. We starting with Hillary talking about her six different rates for capital gains and Rand Paul's flat tax. Now, the flat tax was something Steve Forbes pushed several years ago. Any chance of any of this happening, though, Tom? You know, probably not. Realistically, some of it will happen. Real tax reform, the challenge is there's always a winner and a loser in every tax debate, and the losers don't like to lose. And who would be the losers in general? Well, in general, it depends on the tax. In the flat tax, you definitely have some poor and middle class. They're going to be losers. The rich are going to be winners, for sure. Because you're lowering their tax rates. In the capital gains rate, the investors are going to be losers. So you've got people who are winning, people who are losing. You got to decide, are you going to lose or are you going to win? All right, you mentioned Hillary, and there are certainly more Republicans than Democrats who have announced at this point. Any of the other candidates, have they come out with anything that's kind of interesting as far as tax reform is concerned? You know, the general feel among the GOP is that they want to simplify. The challenge, again, is you're changing the whole idea of the tax law. The tax law is a series of incentives. So if you're going to flatten it, you have to broaden it, which means you're taking away incentives. It may mean you take away the home mortgage deduction. It may mean you take away incentives for oil and gas investment or incentives for investing in the stock market. And, right now, there's some discussion by Obama about changing the incentive for investing in a 401k plan. So there's all sorts of incentives that change, and when those change, you just have to think, okay, how do I want those to change? How does that affect me? Well, aside from how it affects me, how would a simplified tax code affect the entire economy of the country, you think? Frankly, it would be a huge upheaval. Because the tax law is, it's gearing things towards, it's gearing investment towards certain ways. For example, back in the 1980s, we had the Reagan, big tax reform by Reagan in 1986. I was in Washington at the time. And what happened is that they eliminated the tax benefit for doctors and lawyers, basically, high income people to invest in real estate. And the result was the savings and loan crisis of 1989. So it has a huge, even one change like that can have a huge impact on the economy. Now, you're talking about both parties now are going to be addressing taxes. Is this going to resonate with voters? It seems like that's sort of a side issue for most people. I think it is and it isn't. I was reading that 71% of the public is in favor of tax reform. 71%? I think they're just in favor of tax reform on somebody else. Where
that's it.
So not on themselves,
John,
right?
Exactly. John, with the way Congress is working.
You cannot hear you, Julie. Can you put those headphones on there?
Yeah, they're on.
Can you hear them?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Go ahead. Yeah, the way our Congress is today, the House and the Senate, really what are the chances of anything passing?
Honestly, there will be minor changes, but a major tax reform, you would have to have the president and each house in favor of it. Right. Dave Camp, who I think was tremendous as the chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee, he actually proposed a major tax reform.
And they drove him out of Congress.
They drove him out of Congress.
Right.
That's exactly right.
So this does not sound very...
So that was a lesson for everybody else.
It would seem to be.
Too many special interests, too much money.
The reality is that taxes affect every aspect of our life and every aspect of our investing, every aspect of our business. So anything you change, people are so used to a tax incentive and they do react to a tax change. And so you just have to understand it's going to have an impact on the economy.
Well, there was a time when you could actually deduct interest you paid on credit cards years ago. We survived that change, though.
Right, and certainly we survived the Reagan tax changes. Actually, I think the Reagan reform, that was the last major reform, and it did just fine. It's just that people have to have, be willing to give up certain things for, other things.
And Tom, we survived some increases on the very wealthy under this administration, and we certainly had decreases for the majority of us. Nothing went bad. The economy actually improved. And the deficit's now half of what it was 3 years ago.
Well, and so I never suggest that tax change is necessarily bad. It's also not necessarily good. And you just, what I think is you just have to watch it, pay attention to it, and vote accordingly.
Is this your website, taxfreewealthadvisor.com?
That is my website.
All right. Tom Wheelwright, I wish we had more time to discuss this because you can talk about taxes until you die, I guess.
And you will.
Yeah, right. You certainly will. Tom Wheelwright, thanks so much for being with us.